Stanley Cup playoffs start tomorrow as well. Regular season is done. To the ice we go. Some ice advice or Stanley Cup playoff puck talk with Chris Meaney of the NHL joining us here on this Friday morning on the Early Line. Chris, as always, we appreciate the time. Thanks for being here on this Friday to set the stage for the Stanley Cup postseason, one of the best playoffs we see in any sport, anywhere, each and every year.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. Happy Friday. I love joining you guys. And yeah, I mean, you guys are talking NBA a little bit earlier on. We have the puck dropping tomorrow in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's a great time to be a sports fan. Love being here, guys. Thanks.
It certainly is, Chris. It really is. Let's start in the Western Conference. Look at the 4 playoff series that we have. Of course, the Winnipeg Jets, best record, most points this year in the National Hockey League. They are the top seed in the Western Conference. They won the President's Trophy. We'll talk about the curse in just a moment, but a hefty favorite against the St. Louis Blues. Vegas Golden Knights, a favorite against the Minnesota Wild, the Colorado Avalanche, in a really great opening round set against the Dallas Stars. And can Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and the Edmonton Oilers finally get over the mountaintop? They have a really good opening round set against the LA Kings. Chris, as you look at our 4 opening round playoff series that we have out west, to you, what is the most competitive series that we are going to see?
Oh, my goodness. I think I have to go with Colorado and Dallas. I think the last time I joined you guys, I was really just all over both of those teams. I really liked what the Avs did at the deadline. Of course, they've made a lot of trades. It's pretty rare to see a team, trade for a new goalie. In fact, 2 goalies they traded for this year. They traded a superstar, Mikko Rantanen, away. They get Martin Necas back. They get some depth down the middle in Brock Nelson, as well as Charlie Coyle, who's played in the playoffs every year of his career. So I think that they're set up to have a lot of success. And as much as I like this Dallas Stars squad, unfortunately, Jason Robertson suffered an injury in the last game of the season for the Stars. His status is unknown. And looking more at their numbers, this is a team offensively that can bring it with anybody. They got great goaltending, but their 5-5 play over the last 2 months since the Four Nations faceoff has not been great. In fact, they've allowed the most shots on goal. They have the highest expected goals against rate at 5-5 per 60. And the Avs don't give up a whole lot, and they're second over that span in shots on goal. But I do believe that's going to be a series that goes 7. The Stars have been knocking on the door over the past couple of years in the Western Conference Finals in each of the last 2 years. I think that is the most competitive of the 4, but my goodness, those 4 series that you brought up, even the Blues as a wild card team, you mentioned President's Trophy, and that's a team that I think could upset St. Louis, could go on a run. They only have 4 regulation losses since February 22nd. That's the best mark in the league.
I think the best thing we can look at as well, Chris, is the word that you use, competitive here, because sometimes we look at so many other sports and it's a deviation of who's the favorite and who might be able to win a championship. If we just look at the Western Conference Finals, there's 4 teams here at the FanDuel Sportsbook to 1 price, which you might translate and say, well, yeah, there's probably a minus 140 favorite, a plus 320 favorite. Look at this. The Avalanche plus 350, the Golden Knights plus 430, the Oilers plus 460, and the Jets at a plus 470 price. Talk to me about those top 4 teams and how lumped together they are, and it truly shows how competitive that Western Conference playoff is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. If I were to give you the top 10 teams in the league, I think I'd have 7 from the Western Conference. And you can make a case for any of these teams. I just mentioned the Blues. Even when they won the Stanley Cup, they were the worst team in the league. When the calendar flipped to whatever year that was, 2018, 2019, they went on a run and won the Stanley Cup. And I wouldn't be shocked. But, I would say after Colorado, the Vegas Golden Knights have a pretty decent path. I like the Minnesota Wild. They have struggled over the past couple months. They've gotten a little bit healthier lately with Kaprizov and Joel Eriksson Ek back in the lineup. But Vegas is just a couple years removed from winning the Stanley Cup. And, I like their path after the Minnesota Wild. LA and Edmonton, I think that's a little bit of an easier matchup, having to avoid Colorado and Dallas. But I think the team here with the best value may be the Kings, guys, at plus 750. And I know this is round 4 in a row against the Edmonton Oilers. And, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, those are 2 guys that it's really hard to pick against. But there's 2 reasons in particular why I like this LA team. One, they're finally going to have home ice advantage. They haven't in the past against the Oilers. They're the best home team in the league. And number 2 is the goaltending. You look at Darcy Kemper. He leads the NHL in high danger save percentage using our edge stats over at NHL.com/fantasy. And you look at Kemper since January 1st. He's tied for number 1 in wins. He's number 1 in save percentage. He's number 1 in goals against average. He's tied for first in shutouts. He's allowed 2 or fewer goals, guys, in 25 of his past 33 games, and 2 or fewer in 16 of his last 17. So he's red hot at the moment. And I look at the Oilers' goaltending, not so much. We may see Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard, mentioned the high danger save percentage. Those 2 goalies well below the league average. And I don't think the Oilers are fully healthy at the moment. No Ekholm for the rest of the way. So the Kings are at home, and they're dogs. And I think that they can go on a bit of a run.
Chris, only 2 teams around the National Hockey League in the regular season allowed as a team fewer than 210 total goals. As you mentioned, the LA Kings, and of course the favorite to win the Hart Trophy, Connor Hellebuck and the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets 116 points in the regular season, most around the National Hockey League. With the best record, they won the President's Trophy. But is the curse going to be a thing once again? Our last President's Trophy winner to hoist Lord Stanley's Cup, the Chicago Blackhawks in the 2012-2013 NHL season. Chris, that means the last 11 who won the President's Trophy did not win the Cup. In fact, only 2 of our last 11 have even made the conference finals, most recently last year out east, the New York Rangers. You see the Jets there with the 4th best price to win the Western Conference crown. Chris, do you believe the President's Trophy curse will continue here in 2025?
It's hard to argue, Ben, when you lay that out like that. But, you know, as much as this, I do like this Jets team a lot. I mean, Connor Hellebuck, I think, should be the MVP. You talked about some of the numbers there. They're pretty deep. When you look at them on paper and some other teams in the Western Conference, you're like, I'm not going to pick Winnipeg. But the thing for me with the Jets is they didn't really do anything at the deadline. They kind of stood put. Last year, they were aggressive at the deadline. It didn't work out for them. And unfortunately, Nikolai Ehlers is one of their better players. He's considered week to week. They should get Gabriel Velarde back in this series. I don't think that they're going to go on a run. In fact, I think if we're looking for an upset here, we can take the St. Louis Blues. Binnington against Hellebuck. We've seen Binnington have success on the big stage. We saw it in the Four Nations face-off when those 2 went head-to-head as well. So I like the Blues, and even if they get by the Blues, they got Colorado and Dallas, guys. That's a tough path.
Eastern Conference with Chris up next. Western Conference playoffs in our previous segment with the NHL's Chris Meaney. Now we look at the Eastern Conference side of things as we get underway. Chris, I asked you which series of our 4 in the Western Conference you considered to be the most competitive. You highlighted basically all of them, Kings, Oilers, Stars in that matchup as well against the Colorado Avalanche, even the St. Louis Blues, giving the Jets a difficult time. If the Blues could be your big underdog in the Western Conference, as we look at our 4 out east, which underdog do you believe is the most likely to strike that opening round upset?
Yeah, look at those 2 Canadian teams up at the top. I mean, Montreal against the Capitals and the Ottawa Senators against the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Battle of Ontario there. I think the most competitive on the board there certainly is Florida and Tampa Bay. And much like I talked about Colorado and Dallas, I feel like whoever gets out of that series will be the team that represents the Eastern Conference. I mean, those 2 teams are loaded. You look at Florida and Tampa, and the last 5 years, one of those two teams have been in the Stanley Cup Finals. We had Tampa 3 years in a row. Florida looking to get back for their 3rd straight season. But in terms of upset, guys, I mean, the Canadians like the Capitals, right? I talked about St. Louis, only 4 regulation losses since the Four Nations face-off. The Canadians only 5. So they've been competitive. They've hung in a lot of games. They've been playing playoff hockey for quite some time. I do think at the end of the day, the Capitals will win that series, but I think the Canadians will hang around. If you wanted to do some series spread, I could see that series going 7 games, given the situation in Washington. Logan Thompson's health is questionable right now. We don't know if he's going to be ready to go. Montembeau's been playing really good hockey. The Canadians play with a lot of pace and speed, using our edge stats. They're number 3 in terms of one of the quickest teams in the NHL. But the Ottawa Senators have been they're an underrated squad, and the Maple Leafs core, although I think this is the best Leafs team we've seen in a few years, they haven't shown us that they can go on a run. And Ottawa and Brady Tkachuk, the first time in the playoffs, they have a horse on the blue line and Jake Sanderson, who's going to play 26 to 28 minutes a night here in the playoffs. They have a goalie in Allmark, who won the Vezina a couple years ago. He's a solid goaltender. So I think that Ottawa, they bring a nice blend of skill and toughness, and Toronto will be tested. So I think that the Sens are an interesting upset pick, and The one series I think that won't be that competitive is, the biggest favorite on the board. There's the Carolina Hurricanes against the Devils. Unfortunately, Jack Hughes not there. Some questions offensively, defensively. Looks like Dougie Hamilton will be back, but I think Carolina, you want to take them in Vegas maybe, as a series parlay, you can get plus 115.
Chris, I want to focus on the Toronto Maple Leafs for a couple different discussion points here. If we equate it to the NBA, the number 2 overall seed in the NBA Western Conference is the Houston Rockets. And we're telling ourselves, you know what? Price points here, they shouldn't be the number 2 seed. They're not deserving of that. The reason I bring it up is the number 2 overall points team in the Eastern Conference was the Toronto Maple Leafs. We head over to the FanDuel Sportsbook. Hurricanes, Panthers, Lightning, and Capitals all above the Maple Leafs. So let me ask you this question. Does a lot of this have to do with the Maple Leafs and their trials and tribulations in the playoffs, or just the way the playoffs set this year, we're not trusting the Toronto Maple Leafs to do a lot of damage?
Yeah, it's a good question because the path is tough, right? I mean, it just talked about Ottawa hanging around with them and, they get by the Ottawa Senators. They're going to have to play the winner of the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Florida series, right? And as I alluded to earlier, those two teams are just battle tested, honestly. Like, what can you say about either one of them, right? Tampa's looking like vintage Tampa when they went to the finals 3 years in a row, and Florida's healthy. It sounds like Matthew Tkachuk is going to be ready to go. They picked up Brad Marchand, who has a ton of experience, so their top 6 is fantastic. They have arguably one of the better bottom 6 in the NHL as well. So I think that's part of it. And honestly, again, this Maple Leafs team, they just haven't shown us. They haven't proven to us that they could go on a long run. They have the same core. They've made some changes, another coach, different goaltending. I do like the moves. Stolarz has been fantastic down the stretch. Chris Tanev is a shutdown defenseman. So they do have the pieces set up, guys, to have success. But I'm not going to give them benefit of the doubt. If they do get by Ottawa, sure. That is going to be great for the franchise. But having to face Tampa Bay or Florida, it's going to be a tough test for them.
9th consecutive playoff trip for the Leafs. They have only made it to the second round once in the previous 8 years. 30 seconds, Chris Meaney, on the eve of the Stanley Cup playoffs starting. Give us your Stanley Cup finals prediction, please.
Yeah, I have a Final Four of Colorado and Vegas in the West. I do have Washington and Florida in the East. I think the Avalanche are going to win the Stanley Cup, and I think they're going to beat the Florida Panthers. I like Nathan McKinnon this time to get the Conn Smythe. Last time the Avs won, it was Cale Makar. I think we'll see a big playoff run. Nate.
Chris Meaney, always delivering. Hour number 3 up next.